Welcome to this video and podcast from Beyond Ordinary Women. I'm Kelly Araby. I'm part of the Beyond Ordinary Women ministry team. And joining me today for our conversation is Dr. Lynetta Manning. Lynetta recently retired from Dallas Seminary, where she served as the Assistant Dean of Students and Advisor to Women. You can find out more about Lynetta on our website, beyondordinarywomen.org. Recently, we talked with Lynetta about handling disappointments in ministry, and you can find that video and podcast on our resource page. As we were going through that process, we talked about women who find themselves in ministry in a practical context, walking through situations where one finds herself in a unique role, maybe one she didn't expect. And Lynetta, you mentioned your experience watching the live action film Mulan with your grandchildren. And we had talked about how often God uses art to inform and give insight into the human condition. So tell us about that. What was it like watching Mulan with your grandchildren?
It was great. I started out watching it because I thought it was for my children. And all of a sudden I realized, no, this is really for women. This is for me. And it was an experience that really led me to kind of look at it more and kind of see the parallels of Mulan and Esther and us as Western women or Eastern women.
So for listeners who might not have seen the film, how did the experience parallel the story of Esther?
Mulan is in an Eastern setting. She is in Imperial China, and she is in a male dominant culture where women have certain expectations of women, and they're not the same as the expectations for men. And so for Mulan, who was a woman, a young girl, who was dearly adored by her father and taught in martial arts and how to be quite athletic. She rode horses, she did all kinds of things and was quite good at all of them. Found herself in a situation where she was having to make decisions about protecting her family, trying to honor her family, and yet follow her own desires. And when her dad was called up to go into the armed forces to serve his country, who was going to war again, he was crippled. She knew that if he went, he would not come back. And so she stole away in the middle of the night, and she stole his armor, she stole his sword, and she sneaked off and joined the army under the disguise of being a man, which if she was found out, she would have been disgraced her family, and she would have been dishonored her country, she would have dishonored her community, and she would possibly have been killed.
Tell us about the story of Esther, and how does that remind you of the film you saw?
Well, the story of Esther is a young woman that was taken out of her Jewish culture and placed in a very foreign culture. And she was chosen because of her beauty. She was groomed to be even more beautiful. And then she was made the queen because of her beauty. It had nothing to do with anything else. It was all about beauty and being appreciated by the king. I began to see the relationships between the two films, and then the relationships between us and Christians as to our God, And so for Mulan, she was in an Eastern culture, and the values of the women there to honor their families by marriage. Beauty was very much an important thing as well. And loyalty to the community, to the family, and to the country were the three things that Mulan had to keep in mind. But she did that, but it was in a way that was could be seen as rebellious, and the outcome turned out to be great. But there was a lot of things that had to happen to make it all come together. With Esther risked being killed because she went into the king. She asked for something that was very risky for her, and Mulan did something that was very risky for her. So the way that they work back and forth is really pretty phenomenal. Both of them were following a power bigger than themselves. Esther was following the one true God, although he's not mentioned in the book of Esther. And Mulan was following a phoenix, which is a symbol of their strength and their courage and their faith.
So what did you identify with?
What I started thinking about was so many of the women that I have encountered in ministry that find themselves in situations as a woman and think that maybe they're not being recognized for all their talents, for all their gifts. And many times it will make some women angry. It will make them aggressive in trying to bring change. And usually that doesn't work well at all. So it gave me an insight to really think through what are my values, how do my values as a Western woman fit with the scriptures, how does my culture support my values, should my values change, how do my values honor God and the scriptures. So it was interesting to look at Mulan and read the story of Esther again and compare those two stories and then see how it would apply for me as a Westerner.
So Kay receives emails from all over the world from people who are finding our resources at beyondordinarywomen.org. And we know that there are women who live in traditional settings where a woman might be seen or treated as insignificant or as peripheral. I just want to invite you to speak to those women whom God has uniquely called and put in positions of influence. What would you say to them?
I would tell them to be sure that as they think about the culture that they're in, recognize, are you in an Eastern mindset culture? Are you in a Western mindset culture? Are you in a Christian dominant culture, or are you not? And then you need to think about what the value systems of those traditional cultures are. And each one has its own traditional cultural norms. For Mulan, what the culture expected of her was that she be a beautiful woman, that she honored her family by marriage, that was the way she brought honor to her family. That Eastern culture was an honor shame culture. When you look at Esther, the same is true. It's an Eastern mindset. It's an honor shame culture. Though Mulan wasn't following the one true God and Esther was following the one true God, they were both trying to honor something, in which for Mulan, it was family, and it was her community, and then it was her country. For Esther, it was her people and her family, and she was honoring her God because that's who she was. She was a Jewish woman. And so for us as Westerners, we're not based on an honor shame culture. We're based on a guilt culture that kind of drives us towards righteousness if we're Christians. And so we need to live in such a way that brings honor to Christ and to his community, his family, and ultimately to his kingdom. And so all three stories, our story as Westerners, Mulan's story, and Esther's story, all have valuable insights that we can learn how to serve the one true God as Christians better. Oftentimes Westerners, we as Westerners, come to the scriptures with a different mindset than the scriptures were written. The scriptures were written by an Eastern mindset. So when we come to the scriptures, we need to be sure that we read them looking at the scriptures as they were written for the original audience. The Eastern mindset comes to the scriptures looking to see what it tells them about God every time. And it makes a whole lot of sense to us as Westerners if we will go to the scriptures the same way. Then we can take those things that we understand about God and look at the story, what it's saying about God, and then we can make those applications to us as to, okay, now, how does that apply to my life? How am I supposed to honor God? How am I supposed to live my life in such a way that it's lived righteously using the principles that I've just read? And it clarifies the scriptures. It helps to understand other people in different cultures when we're working with them, because if they're of an Eastern mindset, that's the way they're going to be reading the scriptures. If we're working in a Western context, we need to work with them in that same way, understanding what the mindset is, but coming to the scriptures the same way, understanding the scriptures the way they were written, because they're written for a reason, and they're all truth. And so we have to learn how to apply them in our lives, regardless of what context that we're in.
Thank you for sharing your perspective, Lynetta. I appreciate it. You can find our first video and podcast with Lynetta called Handling Disappointment in Ministry at beyondordinarywomen.org. We hope that you will find it helpful, as well as many other resources available on our website. You can find our media list under resources at beyondordinarywomen.org.